Let's talk about a question I think a lot of us have asked ourselves. How do you actually know if therapy is working? It's almost never this one big aha moment. Instead, it's about learning to spot all the small, steady signs that show you're really on the right path. So, you've started therapy. First of all, that's a huge step, so congrats. But maybe a few sessions in, you're starting to wonder, is this actually doing anything? Progress isn't a straight line. It's messy, it's subtle, and sometimes it can honestly feel like you're going backward. So let's get into how you can spot the real signs of growth. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to touch on the science of why our brains can even change. Then, we'll dive into a checklist of signs, breaking them down into two big groups: the shifts happening inside you and the changes in how you act. We're also going to tackle that super confusing feeling when therapy makes you feel worse before you feel better. And finally, we'll wrap up with how all those little wins add up to something huge. All right, so first things first, let's build the foundation here. It's so easy to feel like our habits, our anxieties, our thought patterns, that they're all just set in stone. But the most hopeful truth is they're not. Change isn't just some nice idea, it's a biological reality. It's literally what your brain is built to do. And it all comes down to this absolutely incredible concept: neuroplasticity. I mean, simply put, your brain isn't hardwired. It's more like software that's constantly updating. It's designed to adapt and change and rewire itself your entire life. Every single new thought you have, every experience, it physically forges new connections in your brain. And this is just fascinating, right? It shows us that therapy isn't just talking about your feelings. It's an active experience that literally rewires your brain. Scientists can actually see measurable physical changes in the parts of the brain that handle things like emotional regulation and decision-making. So think about that. You're not just feeling different. You are actively sculpting a different brain. Okay, so with that in mind, that our brains can change, let's get into our first checklist. These are the internal shifts, the changes happening in your inner world that, often pop up way before anyone on the outside would notice a thing. So what exactly are we looking for here? Well, you can kind of ask yourself these questions. Are my thought patterns changing, even a little? Am I letting myself feel more without so much judgment? Am I starting to finally understand my own triggers and what I actually need? Do I bounce back from a bad day just a little bit faster? And is that little glimmer of hope starting to come back? Let's just dig into that first one. Thinking different thoughts. This is a huge sign of progress. Maybe before, one tiny mistake at work would just send you into a complete spiral of self-criticism. But now, you might notice there's a little bit of space, a little pause. You don't just automatically jump to the worst-case scenario. You start seeing the gray areas, considering other possibilities. That flexibility is a core building block for a healthy mind. And this right here really gets to the heart of what it means to bounce back faster. Healing is not about never having a bad day again. I mean, come on, life is always going to have challenges. The real sign of progress is how fast you recover. A setback that might have knocked you out for a whole week before might now just derail you for a day, or maybe even just an hour. You learn to forgive yourself and just get back on track. All right, so we've covered the internal stuff, the shifts inside your own head. Now, let's talk about how all that work starts showing up in the real world, the changes in your actions that you, and probably other people, can actually start to see. This is where the rubber really meets the road, It's when that inner work starts to cash out into real-world action. You start making these small, healthy tweaks to your daily life. You become a little more willing to step out of your comfort zone. Your friendships feel more real. You actually get better at saying no, and you start remembering to have fun. And look, taking more risks sounds so dramatic, right? But we're not necessarily talking about jumping out of an airplane here. It's usually about these small, quiet acts of courage. It's speaking up in that meeting when you used to stay silent. It's trying out that new hobby you were always a little too scared to start. Every single one of those little risks builds your self-trust. It proves to yourself that you can handle new things. Now, this might sound a little strange at first, but a huge sign of progress is that you might actually find yourself being less nice. And this isn't about being mean or unkind. It's about stopping that old habit of people-pleasing at your own expense. It means you're finally realizing that your needs matter too, and you're starting to set boundaries to protect your own energy. You're trading being a people-pleaser for being genuinely kind, and that starts with being kind to yourself. Okay, let's talk about a really, really important and often super confusing part of this whole journey. What happens when you start therapy and you actually feel worse? This is surprisingly common, and it's probably one of the most critical signs to understand. A great way to think about this is the surgery versus spa day analogy. A lot of us go into therapy expecting a spa day, right? Something immediately relaxing, comfortable, feels good. But deep, effective therapy, it's much more like surgery. You're finally addressing a core issue. And the process of opening things up so they can heal properly, well, it involves some initial pain. It's tender, it's vulnerable, but it's absolutely necessary for a real, lasting repair. And believe it or not, this experience is so common, it actually has a name. It's called the therapeutic dip. It's a well-documented phase where, as you start to confront things you've pushed down for a long time, your anxiety or sadness can spike for a bit. It is a totally normal part of the process. So if you're in this phase, I really, really want you to hear this. You are not failing. It doesn't mean therapy isn't working. In fact, it often means the exact opposite. This discomfort means you're finally dealing with the stuff that needs to heal. You're not numbing it out or avoiding it anymore. And that is where the real transformation begins. So we've talked about that difficult dip. How do we get from there to real lasting change? Well, it's not about one giant heroic leap. It's all about the steady, quiet, powerful buildup of small, intentional steps. It's a beautiful, simple chain reaction, really. It all starts with one tiny shift. You catch one negative thought and you just question it. That single action lets you react a little differently, just one time. But you do that again and again, and that new reaction starts to become a new pattern. And those new patterns, that's what ultimately changes your entire life. It's a huge ripple effect that starts with the smallest possible choice. And this is why it is so, so important to actually see and celebrate these small victories. Don't rush them off. Did you set one tiny boundary today? Did you choose not to fall back into an old, unhelpful habit? Acknowledge it. Give yourself credit. Every single one of those moments is proof. It's confirmation that you are moving forward and building a new way of being, one little step at a time. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. Progress isn't always loud or flashy, but it's always there if you're willing to look for it. So what's one small piece of evidence, no matter how tiny it seems, that you can see in your own life today? Because recognizing that, that's the real key to seeing just how far you've already come.